Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kancharu Mardhanam Devki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadigurum.
So Vasudeva Sutam Devam
Kancharu
Mardhanam
Devaki Paramanandam
Paramanandam Krishnam
Krishnam
Vande
Vande Jagadigurum.
So this is a prayer to Lord Krishna, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's understand this prayer. So how do we start?
So it's like Vasudeva Sutam Devam.
So Vasudeva Sutam
Tam
Devam. So
Devam.
he is a son. Sut means son.
Of the
Son of Vasudeva. Right? His father or foster father who grew him up, his name was Vasudeva. So, sometimes we'll get confused with Vasudeva and Vasudeva. So he himself is known as Vasudeva, like with a long V. Vasudeva.
Yeah.
And Vasudeva is his father. So Vasudeva and Vasudeva are two different words. So Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansa Chadur Mardhanam. So Kans and Chador were two bad guys, right? So he killed both of them, Kans, Chador, and Mardhanam, so destroyer of Kans and Chador. Devaki, Paramanandam. So Devaki was his mother, the mother who gave him birth. Paramanandam, supreme bliss. So he gave supreme bliss, immense pleasure to his mother Devaki. And then what is the last half line? Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. So we pray to Lord Krishna, who is Jagat Guru, who is Guru of the whole world, right? So we have all these beautiful prayers in our scriptures, and they all have beautiful meanings. Very often, people recite these prayers without really knowing what are they reciting. So it's all when you know them, it's the fun is a lot more. You enjoy it a lot.
For some slok, I know the meaning, but I don't know the slok. I don't remember the slok, but for some sloks, I remember the slok, but I don't remember the meanings.
No problem. Well, let's say, a lot of us are like that. I don't know the meaning of a lot of sloks, but that's how we learn. Okay, we'll move with the story of Ramayana. I think before we break, we concluded, if I look at my notes, Balkand and Ayodhya Kand, Lord Ram's birth. He went to forest with Vishwamitra, sage Vishwamitra took him for protection. And then they went to Janakpuri, where Sita was to get married. And then he gets married to Sita and comes to Ayodhya. So there's like one circle of Lord Ram's life, right? You kind of make a loop in the life. You go out and go a bunch of places and come back home. So he goes to main two places, Lord sage Vishwamitra's ashram, and then Janakpuri, and comes back. And now when he comes back, he is a married man. Now he's supposed to be incarnated as on the throne of Ayodhya, but then the story changes. And he has to go to forest, and he goes to first Chitrakoot, and then my brother or cousin brother or brother, Ram Bharat finds out he wants to bring him back, and he goes to forest, requests him to come back, but Ram says none of it, because we are all controlled by, or we need to respect the words of our father, that I should be in forest for 14 years and you should rule Ayodhya, and that's what we are going to do. So he comes back, and Lord Ram lives in Chitrakoot. So that's where I think Ayodhya Kand ends. And now we move to the third chapter. These two are very big chapters of Ramayana. In terms of size, these two chapters comprise about 70% of the book. But a lot of story still remains. So we move to the third chapter, which is called Aranya Kand. Aranya means forest, and so Kand is chapter or book. So this is now the forest. So when you go to forest, fortunately we don't go, we don't need to go. But if you just imagine, we do watch movies and we've seen the shows, right, TV shows. What do we expect in forest? Suppose we have to go to forest. What is that you will see?
Danger.
Danger. Danger. Like what kind of danger?
Like tigers, lions, carnivores.
Okay, right. So all the wild, that's why it's called wildlife, right? So you might see tiger, lion, deer, snakes, pythons. I don't know. I'm not very good at biology.
But sir, I think Ramji was aware of those things, but I think the most trouble thing was the stones on the ground, the way they had to live, like they had to do everything on their own, and it was they had to face a lot of trouble, right? Like more than getting aware of dangers.
Yeah, no, so what we are right now talking about what we will face today if we have to go to forest. So we can just, now we don't need to go to forest, we know that, but we can just make guess of. So one is we can guess, we will have wildlife. Obviously, there will be all these animals and birds and flora and fauna and all that stuff. We'll see different kind of trees and plants and things like that.
Yeah.
We'll also see
many
very different
things also.
We will also see a lot of different type of people, who probably dress differently, who eat differently, who behave differently. More so in India, because the people still live in those areas. Probably may not see that much in Western countries.
Are there any villages?
Where?
In the forest? Or
well, if you go to deep forest, then there are no villages, that people do still live scattered here and there. A few people here and few people there and things like that, right? So we're just guessing. This is what we'll see. We are not going there. So it will be different life. So when Ram went to forest, now he enters after he has met Bharat. They say, okay, we have to enter in deep forest, because that's where we are supposed to go. So they keep walking and then let's just find the right place where we should kind of settle down. So the first place they end up going is an ashram of a sage, because those days the sages did not live in cities and towns. They lived in forests because they wanted to keep away from the world and the worldly affairs and the worldly attractions. And we already saw an example of Sage Vishwamitra. Sage Vishwamitra was living in forests, right? And that's where all these demons were bothering him and his disciples. So all sages lived in forests, though it was inconvenient, they didn't have very good food there, and there was always danger of these bad guys. But still they lived because it was peaceful, it was quiet, they could pray to God and focus on their spiritual journey. So Lord Ram will meet a lot of sages in the forest. So Aranyakand is full of his meeting with sages. He meets them, they talk about a lot of things, and he keeps going. So he meets first sage Atri. His name is Atri, A-T-R-I. So Lord Sage meets Atri, and Atri welcomes him, and there's not as much of discussion about his meeting with Atri, but there's a more talk about his wife Sita meeting Sage Atri's wife. So who was Sage Atri's wife? Anybody knows her name? It's not very Sage Atri. Huh? Say it loud, better. So Sage Atri's wife's name is Ansuya. Ansuya, A-N-S-O-O-Y-A, I think, like a long S, Ansuya. So Atri and Anusuya. So Anusuya and Sita meet. So Sita, now she's Sage's wife. He is a sage, she's Sage's wife. So Sita touches her feet and seeks her blessings. And then they have a little discussion about the responsibilities of a wife. So she gives her some teachings, Anusuya, to Sita about how a wife should live like, right? What are her duties, responsibilities, and things like that. And she further clarifies that, look, I'm teaching you all this, but I don't need to really teach you anything. You already know everything. But I'm teaching you for the benefit of the society. Because what we are talking maybe somebody will document it later on and people will read it and they might adopt in their life. Other thing that happens, she gives her Divya Vastra. Divya Vastra means divine garments. So the clothes that you wear will never get dirty, right? So you don't have to do the laundry. Because she visualized that now going forward, it's 40 years a long time, and she doesn't have a whole trunk load of sarees. So I will give her some clothes, she'll wear once, and that's it. She never have to change. So she gives her this Divyastra. So she doesn't have to change those clothes because they will always look fresh. They will always feel fresh, as if they never got dirty. So there is the first meeting is up between Atri Rishi and Ram, and Anusuya, Mother Anusuya, Mata Anusuya, and with Sita. So after this meeting, Atri worships. There's a big, huge prayer of Sri Ram. He worships him, and then Ram seeks his permission that now we need to go from here. And they meet many sages in between. For example, you will meet Sage Balmiki. Now, I think I should mention that. Now, who is Sage Balmiki? We all know that. So, anybody?
Sir, Sage Valmiki is a sage who wrote Ramayana.
Sage Balmiki is the one who wrote the very first Ramayana, right?
He
so
created
Sage Balmiki
Ramayana.
He is the first writer of Ramayana. The book is known as Ramayana.
But sir, I just didn't understand one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like it said many times that where the sage Valmiki is given a boon that he can whatever he writes will occur. But how did he meet Ramji when he was writing it?
Okay.
Like,
Okay, good question. So let's just talk about it. So based on what we read, it is obvious that Ramji and Balmiki were like contemporary. They were there at the same time, right? Otherwise, how would you meet, right? Like we are contemporary, right? I'm meeting you, you are meeting me. Maybe after a few years, I will die, you will be here, but you guys are all contemporary. So they were together around what same time. So according to Ramcharitmanas, the book that we are reading, this is their first meeting. They meet, right? So let me just talk about this meeting and then we'll talk about the question that you've asked. So they meet and they have a lot of discussion about many things. And Lord Ram asks him that, I'm wandering around in the forest, but I cannot keep wandering for 10 years. I suggest me some place where we should go and just live for 14 years, but in the forest. So they have a lot of discussion and Balmiki says, look, you are everywhere, right? So there's no place to suggest. But then eventually he says that you should go and live in Chitrakoot. So they have a meeting, they have discussion. But we are also saying that he is the one who wrote Ramayana, right? So when did he Ramayana? When did he read Ramayana? Now we also know that a story which is not part of Ramcharitmanas, it's part of many other Ramayana, that Mother Sita, when she got pregnant, she was in the ashram of Balmiki Rishi, right? She left Ayodhya. There's a lot of story about it, and there's a lot of confusion about it. So that confusion part will not go. So she is sage Balmiki's ashram and delivers. She has twins, Love and Kush. You know their names. And it is that time Ram has already become king, right? We all know that. So Ram is already king. Sita has gone to forest. So it is that time about Balmiki writes book on Ramayana. Now, why does he write? When you read the Balmiki Ramayana, there's some insight into it. So it is the sage Narad meets Balmiki Ramayana, according to Balmiki Ramayana. And sage Narad tells that, look, in fact, Balmiki asks sage Narad that I want to know about anybody, if you know, who has all these virtues. He is a perfect man. He has no faults. He is very brave. He is very wise. He cares for people and things like that. So Narad tells him that, look, says Narad, look, there is one man I know who has all these qualities. Then the Balmiki says, who is that person? That he is none other than Ram. He is king of Ayodhya now. And you should write about him. He inspires Balmiki to write about him. See, in our scriptures, there are lots of stories like that, but this is how it is mentioned in the Balmiki Ramayana itself, which probably Balmiki himself did not write. That part somebody else wrote, who knows. And these were written so many years ago, thousands of years ago. It's very hard to say for sure what is factually correct or not. Although learned scholars debate these things. So Balmiki get inspired and said, okay, I will write about him. And he writes that story. So he writes this story that becomes Valmiki Ramayana. And when Love and Kush are born, and they are 5, 6 years old, whatever, he tells this. Valmiki Ramayana is like a poetry, a 24,000 slok poetry. So he recites the Ramayana to these young boys. They are very smart, they have very good memory, and they memorize those. There's a lot of knowledge passed from generation to generation by memory. You say and you hear, rather than more like going on internet and reading. So Love and Kush memorize entire Ramayana. And when they memorize entire Ramayana, and again they're kind of sidetracking the story, they end up in the court of Lord Ram. And then they are reciting that Valmiki Ramayana, which is the story of Ram. And Lord Ram, who is now king, is listening to the story. And how did these boys know all these details? They know about my birth. They know about my going to Vishwamitra. They know about my getting married to Sita, my going to forest, my killing all these demons and coming back and becoming king here. How do these little boys know everything? So he asked them that, how do you know all this? You recited a very nice poem. Beautiful. I enjoyed it. But how do you know all this? They said, well, our Guru taught us. Well, who is your Guru? Well, our Guru is Valmiki. And then Ram goes and meets him. And that's how father and sons meet. So, but Valmiki knew the story of Ram because he experienced it. He met him and he knew about him through many sources, whatever sources were at that time. So that's why he is the first person to write anything about Lord Ram. So Ramayana is therefore called, I think we talked about it probably in the very first class, is the Adi, or he is known as Adi Kavi. You know what is Adi Kavi? What's Kavi? Just Kavi. What is Kavi in English?
Sir, like a poem.
No, Kavi is poet.
Kavi is poet.
Kavi is poet, and Adi Kavi is the first poet. So he is accepted worldwide, not just in India, worldwide, the first poet, somebody who wrote poetry for the first time, Adi Kavi, the first poet, first ever. And the first poet, what he wrote, his first poetry, of course, very big poetry, is Ramayana. And the big poetry, so Kavita is poetry, and the word for this Kavita, or maybe Sanskritized word is Kavya. So Kavya is a poetry, and a very big poetry, it's called Mahakavya. Mahakavya means great poetry. Maha is great, right? Maha is great. So Raja is king, Maharaja is great king, Maharaj, great king, oh, great king. So we just call kings of Maharaj, great king, something like that. I think recently there was a movie, Mahabali, right? You probably know about it, Mahabali. So Bali means, very strong, warrior, and Mahabali is great. So this is the connection between Ram and Ramayana, or Ramayana, Valmiki and Ram. So Ram meets Ram and Sita and Lakshman. They are of course going to be together for the rest of the story. And they meet Valmiki ji. That Valmiki ji, please tell us, after their interaction, where do we live? And Valmiki tells that you live in the hearts of people who are pure. You live in the pure hearts. Things like that, the hearts which don't have any sin. And then eventually he advises that there is a little mountain nearby. It's called Chitrakoot. I think that's in the forest. So it will be best that you go and live there. So they thank Valmiki Rishi, and they meet many other sages. will not go into the details of those sages. But these are two main popular stories, meeting Rishi Atri and Valmiki Rishi. So they reach Chitrakoot, which is, in a modern India, it is somewhere Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, like in the borderline. Part of that is in UP and part of that is in MP, is there. I visited that place about 4 or 5 years ago, and so I'm kind of aware of it. So in Chitrakoot, they find nice, in the forest, and they set up 2 huts, one for Ram and Sita and one for Lakshmana, and they start living there. And when they start living there, people naturally get attracted to them, and they come and visit them, and they have discourse and interactions and things like that. And time flies. So it's kind of and when a lot of people come, then it becomes crowded. Then Ram starts thinking, and they'll be there for years. And there's a lot of debate on that, how many years they live. Some people say 12 years, some say 11 and a half, some say 12 and a half, some say 13, something like that, about 12 years. And then Bhagwan Ram feels that, look, I was supposed to be living in forest. Now, though I'm in a forest technically, but now it's getting too crowded. A lot of people are coming here, so it's more like a city-like environment. And because of that, all the sages live around here, they all get disturbed because they want to live a peaceful, quiet life. They don't want a lot of people around here. So I think I should move out of here. Otherwise, people know me, so they come and meet me. If they want to meet me, I can't tell them no. But I can't entertain everybody because causes disturbance here. So he makes a decision that we need to move out of here. So they leave forest in search of a new place. And they walk a lot and come to Panchavati, a place in Maharashtra. There is a city in Maharashtra, it's a medium-sized city. The name of the city is Nasik, current, in today's modern India, which is about, I would say, maybe 200 kilometers from Mumbai, something like that. So they lived and so there were 5 trees. Panchavati means 5, and Vati is trees. So 5 banyan trees, big trees. So they go, this is a very nice place, and there's a little river flowing there. And the name of the river is, anybody knows what is the name of the river in Panchavati or Nasik? So the name of river in Nasik is Godavari. So Godavari is a river, beautiful river. So they decide that we will just live here because it's a very quiet place. People don't know us. So we already finished about 13 years, another year or so left. So we'll spend another year or so. And when these 14 years, we'll go back to India. So they make their dwelling, their home in Panchavati. Right? Any questions so far?
No, sir.
So while they're in Panchavati, everything is going fine. And now, if everything keeps going fine, then a year will be complete soon, and they'll be going back to Ayodhya, and this story will be over. But that's how now that's not how it happens, because Bhagwan Ram took avatar as a human form, not for this purpose. Why did he take avatar? Why did God took avatar in human form?
All the time he does it to save the earth, sir.
No, but this time, why did he take avatar, Shreyans?
So he was avatar of Vishnuji.
No, but why did he take avatar as Ram? Anybody?
Sir, I think so, to kill all the demons.
No, which demons? Yes. Yes,
Ravan, to kill Ravan.
So he took avatar.
Actually, Ravan had some forms, and Vishnu cursed him that my forms will kill you in your all life form. It's like he lived 7 times, I believe. So one form was Ravan. His name was Ravan, and Lord Ram should kill him. His destiny was that.
Right. So Bhagavan Ram took avatar in human form, or Lord took avatar in human form with name Ram, with a prayer that was made to him by Mother Earth, that look, there is this demon Ravan who is caused havoc, and he's so powerful, so strong, we can't really do anything to him. So please help us. Please help us. So all the gods, even Lord Brahma and Shiva, they all went to Lord Vishnu that please help us. So he says, okay, if you guys can't handle it, I will again come on the earth in human form and will kill Ravan. So now they're in Panchapati. If they go back to Ayodhya, Ravan is still alive, right? So he's still, nothing has happened. So the story has to take turn. So what happens? So once they are in their ashram, a beautiful lady appears at that location. And she's walking by and she stops by the door in this deep forest. What is this? I see some hut here. Maybe some people are living here. And then she said, these are these two charming young men and a very pretty woman there. The three people, right? Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. And this lady gets attracted to Ram. Now she has been deputed there by Ravan to take care of that area. Because Ravan was controlling the whole world almost. There might have been some exceptions. So this lady was in charge of this whole area. So she was also a demoness. And what was her name? Whom I'm talking about? So her name is Shurpanakha. Right, Shurpanakha. So she's a demoness. So she is not really pretty, but this demons have the power or knowledge or skills or siddhi, whatever you call it, they could convert themselves into beautiful looking people or ugly looking people. They can increase their size, they could reduce their size, they could disappear and things like that. So she converted herself into beautiful woman because she got attracted to Ram. That look, he's a very handsome man, and I'm alone. She was alone, wandering around. She didn't have a husband. Again, there's a whole long story about that. We'll not go to that story. So I need to marry this handsome young man. And of course, by the time she didn't know his name, and she didn't care for the name either. So her name, so she is sister of Rama, Shurpanakha. Now, how did she get named Shurpanakha? Anybody knows? So this is made up two words. Most of our Hindi names or Indian names or Sanskrit names have some meaning. You all know that, right? You should know what does your name mean. If you don't know it, ask your parents, Google it, you'll find out. So Shurpanakha is Shurpanakha. Nakha is nails, right? Yeah, we all have nails, right? These nails, we all have 10 nails. Sorry. So Nakha is nails. And Shurpanakha, the Shurp is like most of you are not familiar with that. It is something that my mother liked. To think about my mother, right? If she was alive, she would be 94, 95 years old. So Shurpanakha is, in those days, 50, 60, 70 years ago, the women used that to clean grains, right? So they will use that and do like that and remove all unnecessary part of the grains and get the grain out of it, something like that. So she has nails like Shurp. So that's why Shurpanakha. So that's how the name comes. Let's give another name, another word similar to Kumbhakarna. We know, right? Kumbhakarna. Who is Kumbhakarna? That everybody knows, right? Kumbhakarna was also related to Ravana. What was the relationship?
Brother.
Yeah, sir, the giant brother.
But Ravana's brother, right? So Kumbhakarna also is
Yeah,
made of
sir.
two words, Kumbha and Karna. Karna means ears, and Kumbh means whose ears are like Kumbh. Kumbh is like a big pot. So in a very big pot like here, things like that. So there's a lot of names. Names are there in our literature. Or like Sugriv, we'll meet Sugriv probably in the next class. Sugriv means Sugriv. Su means beautiful, and Griv means this part of the body, this part which connects our head with the rest of the body. So with the one who has a beautiful Griva, this Griva. So many of our names are on the body parts. So his name was Sugriv, like Kumbhakarna, or like Shurpankhā. So let's come back to the story of Shurpankhā. So Shurpankhā comes there, and she knows I'm a demoness, and demons, they don't look beautiful. So, but they have the power to convert themselves, at least temporarily, to look beautiful. So she converted herself into a beautiful woman, good-looking, beautiful, attractive woman. And then she goes to Ram that, hey, young man, look, you are such a handsome man, and I'm such a beautiful woman. Looks like God has made for each other. Right? There's a phrase in English, made for each other. God has made us for each other. So he has made me for you, and he made you for me. God has made for each other. So let's just get married, and I've got a beautiful palace, and we'll go and settle there. Something like that. Then Ram said to her, now, of course, Ram, he is incarnation of God. He knew that she is not a princess, she is not a beautiful woman, and she is a demoness. So Ram said, look, lady, thank you for your offer, but look, you already see this woman sitting next to me. So I'm already a married man. She's my wife. So I'm already married man. So thank you very much. I'm sorry, excuse me, I can't marry you. And I have decided I don't want to marry another woman. I want to have just only one wife. During those days, it was very common for people or men to have multiple wives. We already know, like his own father, King Dasrath. How many wives did he have?
2.
What are their names?
Sir, 3 wives.
So, Ayati, you want to tell their names?
Kaikai, Kaushalya, and Saumitra.
Kaikai, Kaushalya, and Sumitra. So 3 wives, and again, Valmiki Ramayana talks about many other wives without giving any names. So he possibly might have had many other wives, but maybe others were not that prominent, so their names were not given. But at least 3 we know. Even Ramcharitmanas, we talk about 3 wives. So all these 4 sons, Ram was born to Kaushalya, and Lakshman and Shatrughan were born to Sumitra, and Bharat was born to Kaikeyi, right? So it was not uncommon for at least kings to have multiple queens. It was pretty common. And later on in Mahabharata also we know Lord Krishna has multiple wives, Arjun has multiple wives, and many others like that. So it was, if Ram would have wanted to marry her, it would have been perfectly acceptable according to the norms of that time. But Ram has made the decision, and that's a very revolutionary decision of Ram. He wanted to break the tradition of having multiple wives. He says, no, look, if a woman can marry only one man, the man should do the same thing. He should marry only one woman at the same time. So I'm already married. I cannot have another wife. So he told Shurpankhā, well, Shurpankhā, thank you very much for the offer, but look, I'm not interested because I'm already married man. My wife is already with me. But Shurpankhā naturally was very disappointed. Yes, Ira, you have a question? Go ahead.
So when the wife, when a man and a woman get married and then the man has another wife, what happens to the first wife?
Nothing happens because, again, those days, the system was, and they both lived in harmony as his wives, just like Kausalya, Kaikeyi, and Sumitra. They all three wives. They've all their own independent palaces, and they were all. They were all, now it might have happened that king may like one wife more than the other, right? Just like in human beings, we may be 4 or 5 brothers. I may like one brother more than the other brother. That's possible. But yes, all wives lived in harmony, and it's possible. And as a human nature, it is. People may have some jealousy and things, frictions, and when you are in one family, this happens in all relationships, right? Not just wives. If I'm living with my, in India, still there are a lot of families live as joint families, but brothers, there are 3 brothers, their wife, their children, parents, some 10, 15 people live in the same household. And they all live in harmony and peace, but occasionally they will have conflict, occasionally they have fights. So that's part of life. Yes. What else? Yes, what?
That's it.
Okay, very good. So where we were. Okay. So Bhagwan Ram, Lord Ram told Shurpankhah, okay, well, look, thank you very much, but I can't marry. Then Shurpankhah saw Lakshmana, that look, he is also very handsome. Ram is at least Shyam. Shyam in the sense like a little dark complexion, a bluish complexion. But Lakshmana was like in Hindi called Gora. A Gora means like a white man, something like that. So, well, okay, how about you? This guy is all by himself. I don't see his wife anywhere here. So she went to Lakshman that, look, young man, you are pretty handsome yourself and you are alone. So how about you getting married me? Then Lakshman should have agreed, right? He's alone, right? Why did he say no? Or what did he do?
He's married.
He's married.
Go ahead. So Lakshman was married. We all know that, because they all 4 brothers got married about the same time. But that time, of course, his wife was not with me. So how did Lakshman handle the situation when she approached Lakshman that, okay, let's get married, man? So what did Lakshman do?
He
What is
cut
that he
her
should have done?
loose.
What is that he should have done?
You
What do you
should have
think?
just refused.
So Lakshman said, look, thank you very much for the offer, but look, you look my situation. See, he is my big brother and my Bhavi. Of course, he never used the word Bhavi, he calls like mother. So Sita, he always addresses mother. And I'm here at their service. So I've come here to serve them. So I do their seva. So I cook for them. I go to forest. I bring kandamul, phal, fruits, vegetables. Right? I get the wood from the forest to cook food and things like that. So I'm always at the service. I like the servant. So if you marry me, you will be also a servant. Like servant's wife is servant. So, so you want to be servant? Are you crazy? So naturally, she don't want to be servant. So I think that doesn't sound very good. So she said, no, you should not think about getting married. You will have no life with me. I'm a servant. I just have to follow all the wishes and desires of Lord Ram and Sita. Because the whole reason excuse me, that I've come here simply because to serve them. So you will have very, very bad life with me. You better marry Ram, because then you'll be the queen, right? So she goes to Ram again, and the Ram again sends him back to. So if you see some television shows or movie or a stage act of this, there's a very funny scene, So she is kind of a shuttlecock between when we play badminton. When this happens, she goes between 2 brothers, and now she realizes these people are making fun of me. and they are just shunting me from one place to another place. And then she gets very wild. And then when she gets wild, she forgets that she is right now disguised, the beautiful woman. And then she comes to her original form, a violent demoness, ugly, violent demoness. And then she runs towards Sita to just eat Sita. That I'm going to eat this woman that is with you. And that is the time she has to be stopped. Because if she was not stopped, she will catch Sita and she will eat her up. And that's the time Lord Ram gives a signal to Shurpankhah. So that's the right time to do the right thing. Earlier, they didn't do anything. Earlier, she was talking, so they were talking, knowing fully well that she was a demoness. They did not do anything. They did not punish her. She has not committed any violent crime by that time. So if nobody does a crime, you can't punish that person. Now she is ready to kill Sita. So in your self-defense, now you need to act, which is the law that we follow even today, right? I can't just go and kill anybody. Can I? Can any one of us do that? In no civilized society, we can do that. If we do that,
if they try to, sir, they go to jail.
Then you go to jail, you get punished according to the laws of the land, right? So we can't do anything like that. But if somebody is trying to kill me, then in my self-defense, I might do that. And if I can prove later on that, yes, in my own self-defense, I had to take that action, then I will not be punished by the society. That's how the law, even today, is in most modern civilized society. Of course, then I will have to prove that I really, really did that in self-defense. Had I not done that, that other guy would have killed me anyways. So in self-defense, now Sita has to be protected. Lord Ram gives him a signal to Lakshman that you need to act now, very quickly, very swiftly. And then what does Lakshman does? Does he kill Shurpankhah? What do they do?
He cuts off her nose.
He cuts off her nose and ears. Naak, Khan. Khan, like earlobes maybe, and Naak maybe. It may not be cutting off the whole nose or the entire ear. It will be just a symbolic, maybe a little bit here and a little bruise here or something like that. So they start bleeding. So his nose and ears are cut by Lakshman. And she stops. Had she not stopped with that, they might have probably killed her. But they didn't have to, because she stops at that and runs away from that. So this is the plan that we had. So we had, the whole story is now turning. They are supposed to have very peacefully complete their 14th year in Panchavati. Instead, now they are forced to move on another trajectory, which is created by a new character in the story, which is Shurpankhah. So Shurpankhah comes totally unexpected and does something totally unexpected. And she's not something a random person. She is sister of Ravana. The whole purpose for which Lord Ram has come on this planet, to kill that person, whose sister. So there's a link here between Ram, Shurpankhah, and Ravana. So Shurpankhah now will become a vehicle to take Ram to Ravana, right? If Shurpankhah was not in the story, there was no particular. Now, Ram knew that Ram is a demon, but he's not going to kill her without any fault of his, right? He has done nothing wrong to Ram yet. So what is the excuse he has to kill Ravana? There has to be some excuse to kill Ravana. There's no excuse yet, right? When sage Vishwamitra called him, it was an invitation from Vishwamitra that please come and help us. It was his duty as a prince to help somebody in his kingdom who has been harassed by bad guys. They're just like policemen, like, if I commit a little crime, policeman comes and arrests me. No, I have not done anything to policeman. Why does he do it? Because that is his duty to protect the citizens of a country, of a city, of a town, of a state, right? That's why it does it. Even though there's no, I don't have anything against that policeman. Policeman has nothing against me, but still he does that action. All right. So when they killed Tadaka, I remember in the Vishwamitra's ashram, because they were protecting their own territory, their own people from bad guys. But Ravan was not in that territory. Ravan was already in a different country, in a different state. He has his own empire, right? He has done no harm to Ram yet, or to his people. So he could not directly attack him. But now Shurpankhá will provide that excuse to go to Ravan and then attack Ravan and kill Ravan. Okay. So this is the story we want to talk today. So we started with this movement in forest, living in Chitrakoot and meeting sages like Atri Rishi, Valmiki Rishi, and some other rishis, and also coming to Panchavati for his final year or something, and then sudden turn up the events, meeting with Shurpankhá. I think the next class, 2 weeks later on, we'll see now what happens, what does Shurpankhá do, and where does this story lead to. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop. We still have 10 minutes, so if you have any question or anything you want to discuss, we can discuss. Any question that is unanswered you might have had from today's discussion on the discussion of the previous classes?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Beta.
Sir, during the lockdown, when I watched Ramayana on TV, they told while they were going to the forest, one rishi told to fold their hands in front of a tree because there were some rishis doing tapasya, being invisible. So, what was the name of that tree there?
I don't know which story you are referring to. I don't recall that. Do you know the name of the rishi?
Sir, actually, I don't remember that. While going to Vanvas, they have gone through many villages. So, in one of the village, one rishi told him to do that.
Do what?
Fold their hands in front of a tree, as there were some rishis doing tapasya, being invisible there.
To fold in front of a tree?
Yes, sir. There was 5 or 3 rishis doing Shiv tapasya by being invisible.
I don't really remember any. Which Ramayana were you watching? But there's so many Ramayans on TV. Do you remember which Ramayana were you watching? So this is not part of Ramcharitmanas. So I don't remember this part of the story. Now, many of the TV serials, you should know, they write as a disclaimer in the very first slide that there is a dramatization and a lot of things have been added to make it, entertaining and things like that. So in many of the serials, a lot of things have been added, which is purely imagination by that particular, TV serial, the directors and the writers and story writers and things like that. So they are really, many of them are just not part of any Ramayana actually. So be just careful before you accept everything in TV serials.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ayati.
Does Lord Ram have a sister?
Sister. Yeah, okay. There is no mention of that in Ramcharitmanas, but in some other versions of Ramayana, there is a mention of his sister and an elder sister, that is Shanta, right? Her name is Shanta, but not in Ramcharitmanas. So so Kaushalya and Dasrath, they had a daughter named Shanta, and she was married to another rishi. So and that rishi's name was Shringi Rishi, and he was the one who was invited to perform the yajna so that Dasrath can have sons. So, but that part of the story is not in Ramcharitmanas. So in many Ramayana, like TV serials, you won't see that at all. And in some serials, you will see. So it depends upon what the producer and directors want to show.
I have a question.
What?
So
What?
Lord Dashram had 4 children, but in India you call India Bharat. Why did they name it after Bharat, not Ram or like why did they name it?
Okay. Yeah. So why India is Bharat? Now again, there are a lot of explanations on that. So and scholars argue on that too. So one explanation is that that India's Bharat name has nothing to do with these 4 brothers. So there's no connection at all. So that you should know. So Bharat is one of the brothers, and name Bharat is no connection at all. So what is the connection? So one story is that one of the ancestors of Ram, 5 generations back, 10 generations back, I don't know what it is. One of his great grandfather, his name was Bharat, and the country was named Bharat on his name. That is one story.
Oh, okay.
So that's one story, and I don't have to accept it because there are many such stories. The other more commonly known stories which I used to hear when I was a child, that there was a king, his name was Dushyant, no relation with this family, and he married a celestial woman, Shakuntala, Dushyant and Shakuntala, beautiful woman, and they had a son, Bharat. And again, the Dushyant Shakuntala is a very long story, so I will not tell you the whole long story. So Shakuntala also, like Sita, was living in a Rishi's ashram, and Dushyant was king. So let me tell you this. So, since you have time, let me tell you briefly, and you can again Google the whole story. You just put Dushyant Shakuntala, you can find the whole story. So okay. King Dushyant goes to forest, and then he happens to meet Shakuntala. And again, Shakuntala is very beautiful, and then he gets attracted to her, and they just get married instantly. And they get married instantly, and then he lives there in the forest itself, and then they have a son. And after that, then he remembers that, well, I'm a king, I need to go back to the kingdom. And so he goes back and he tells his wife, Shakuntala, that I have to go. And once I go there, and then I'll send you, chariot and all that, they'll bring you to my palace. But right now I will have to go alone. So he goes, and there's some story that he has been cursed or she has been cursed, that once her husband leaves her, he will forget her. And to know the whole story, again, you Google and you can read it.
But
so
the king would continue, right?
Let me just finish, Devashi, and then you ask me this question. And then he forgets her. And she is waiting, and he doesn't come. Then she says, what happened? And then she takes her son, and what happens? I'm also forgetting the story. So anyway, so I think what happened that he comes there and he finds his boy playing. The son has grown up, and he's playing with a lion. It's so brave. He's playing with a lion like as we play with our little pet dog or cat. He's such a brave boy. But he fails to recognize his wife because he has been cursed or she has been cursed, something like that. Because this boy is so brave, his name is Bharat, and then the country is named after that, Bharat.
Oh,
so these are
okay.
two very. So this second story is more commonly known stories. This is what I learned from childhood. And then there are many other variations, that the name Bharat is because of this reason and that reason. So, nobody knows definitively, what is can say with 100% guarantee that this is the reason why it is called Bharat. And of course, somebody has a strong belief that this is the reason, they will argue this is the reason, naturally, right? So, but these are two stories that I know of. Yes, anyway, Devansh, you have a question?
Yes, sir.
No, sir, not at all, so.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir. My question is that you said King Dushyant, right?
Dushyant, yeah.
That I think the thing was Shantanu, like the Mahabharat Shantanu.
No. That's a different. No, I'm not talking about Shantanu. Shantanu has nothing to do with the name Bharat. So Shantanu is the great grandfather of all these Pandavas, Kauravas. So that's a different king and different. No connection with the name Bharat.
But
Dushyant is a complete.
You telling the story of Abhigyanam Shakuntala, right?
Shakuntala and Dushyant and Shakuntala.
Okay, like Abhigyanam Shakuntala, right?
No, Abhigyan Shakuntala, that is the book written by Kalidas.
So this is in the story of Abhigyanam Shakuntala?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I've not read that. Yeah.
No, because in that story it was the same thing, but the only thing, like I had this in my syllabus and they had written Shantanu, but the story was exact same.
No. Not Shantanu. This is Shantanu Ganga story. That's a different story. So look at Shantanu. Don't get confused with Shantanu and Dushyant. They're two very different periods to different people. Okay, very good. Our time is up, and I'm glad you all showed up today. And make sure you put your name in the chat as you haven't done. I think so. I know what is attendance today. Just write down your name in the chat box. And I'm Jivilin. We will see you 2 weeks later on and see what happens. What should Panka does, right? Okay. All right. Put your attendance there, and I will see you in 2 weeks.